A very good evening to you and welcome to Primetime News, coming to you live and direct from the Newsfirst newsroom here in Colombo. I'm Stephanie Lazarus.
And I'm Sandra Ferdinando. We'll start off with a look at your headlines.
Political parties exert pressure on the government to implement the constitutional amendments, including the electoral reforms, prior to the election. Minister of Finance says that the construction of the new Security Forces headquarters will be suspended.
කෝටි 5000ක් වියදම් කරලා අතුරුගිරියේ මෙවැනි මූලස්ථානයක් ඇති කරන එක අද අපි නවත්තන්න වෙලා තියෙනවා.
Cargo container drivers at the Colombo port on strike yet again.
On to your stories in detail now. The government printer says that the draft bill on the 19th Amendment to the Constitution will be printed and published tonight. Thereby, powers vested with the Executive President will be amended according to the proposed constitutional amendment.
The amendments also include the removal of powers vested with the President to dissolve Parliament, limitations on immunity from courts and protocol to be followed when appointing secretaries to ministries. According to the proposed reforms, the term of the Executive President is due to be reduced from 6 years to 5, while the President's term will be restricted to 2 terms. However, the President will remain as the head of state and Commander-in-Chief. The attempt of many is to transform the current executive presidency to one that will be a puppet and a namesake president. We have managed to defeat it and reach agreements on amendments on several key points as promised. This will be reconsidered again in Parliament. All of us will agree to pass the constitutional amendments in Parliament only if the electoral reform take place concurrently. If a constitutional amendment is taking place, it is not being carried out arbitrarily so that 2 or 3 conspirators can achieve power. What will transpire in the future is a constitutional amendment where the President, who is appointed by the people's mandate, is vested with responsibility, where the President will be the head of the government and the state while protecting the independence of the Parliament.
විධායක ජනාධිපති ධූරය ඉවත් කිරීමේ කාර්යයත්
The clear stance of the United People's Freedom Alliance and the Sri Lanka Freedom Party is that the executive presidency be abolished and the new electoral reform be introduced so that the next election will be held under a new election system. The government cannot pass this without the support of the majority members of parliament, who are over 130 MPs from the United People's Freedom Alliance. Therefore, a massive support for this cause is being rendered by the UPFA, which includes the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and not the United National Party. However, the stance of Ranil Wickremesinghe was that the president should operate on the advice of the Prime Minister. We have not agreed to that. President Maithripala Sirisena was elected president by the people's vote. Therefore, we have accepted that he has the right to hold a ministry pertaining to development and the Ministry of Defence. We are also of the stance that he should be given the power to appoint governors for the provinces. All the parties in the UPFA, including the SLFP, were against the draft. Ranil Wickremesinghe was attempting to bring this in as an emergency bill. We did not allow that. We noted that if this was presented as an emergency bill, we will not give a single vote in favour. The reason being that there is a high possibility for petitions to be presented to the Supreme Court and this be discussed in the Supreme Court and in society. When this becomes an emergency bill, all the matters will be over in 3 days. This will not happen like that.
ඔන්න ගත්තා ඔන්න දැම්මා මෙන්න ගියා කියලා ඉවර කරන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් එහෙම කරන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ.
පසුගිය 12 වෙනිදා ගරු අගමැතිතුමා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ඉදිරිපත් කළ 19 වෙනි ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනයේ නමින් අපි ඒකට අපේ විරෝධය පළ කළා.
On the 12th, the Prime Minister presented the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. We opposed to it because there were 2 primary facts in it which we could not agree to. A party leaders' meeting was called for. The cabinet convened. We have agreed to amend certain points. One is to limit the arbitrary power of the executive presidency. It has also been agreed to reduce the tenure of the president from 6 years to 5 years. The new constitutional reforms propose for the possibility to file fundamental rights cases. Next is that the president had the power to dissolve parliament a year after it had been elected. That power has now been removed. The power to implement the executive power, including that of national security, will be vested on the president elected by the people. The powers of appointing judges to the Supreme Court, Appeals Court and other courts were vested with the president. That power has been removed and vested with the Judicial Services Commission. We hope that this draft bill will move forward and will be passed in Parliament.
සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම ඉවත් කළා අධිකරණ සේවා කොමිසමට ගිහින් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මේ ඉදිරිපත් කළ තියෙන කෙටුම්පත මේ විදිහටම ඉස්සරහට යයි කියලා. මේක අපේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ අනුමත කරයි කියලා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
The JVP says that draft bill on the amendment to the constitution has a positive approach. At the Central Committee meeting that was convened today, the JVP has agreed to support the draft bill on the amendment to the constitution when presented to Parliament and to present more amendments if required. The JVP is of the view that the creation of a new electoral system should be more accurate and more democratic than the existing one. The JVP points out that Parliament needs to be dissolved after the 23rd of April as promised and emphasised that it should not be delayed.
පෞගිය ජනවාරි මාසේ 8 වෙනිදා මේ රටේ ජනතාව ඡන්දෙ දුන්නේ දින 100 වැඩපිළිවෙලට.
On the 8th of January, the people of this country voted for the 100-day program, where the 17th Amendment will be effective, while abolishing the 18th and introducing the 19th Amendment. Abolish the executive presidency and provide relief to the people. The people wanted to defeat the autocratic rule and implement the 100-day program so that a new parliament will be created after the 23rd of April, where a parliament free of drug peddlers, ethanol peddlers, murderers and rogues will be created. If that promise is to be made, the government led by Ranil Wickremesinghe cannot remain in power after the 23rd of April. The promises made to the people need to be fulfilled. The United National Party has taken a decision to work on it. Thereby, Parliament will be dissolved on a date closer to the 29th of April.
මේ රටේ ජනතාව මැතිවරණ නෙවෙයි ඉල්ලන්නේ. පාර්ලිමේන්තුව විසුරා හැරීමේ බලය තියෙන්නේ ජනාධිපතිට. සහ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ බහුතර බලය හිමි කරගන්න පක්ෂයට.
The country is not seeking for an election. Power to dissolve Parliament lies with the President and the party that holds the majority in Parliament. This cannot be decided on by the Working Committee of the United National Party. This cannot be presented as an emergency bill and compiled and passed within 24 hours. There needs to be a broad discussion and a debate. Therefore, we need to say that do not attempt any conspiracies. Reforms to the electoral system is a promise that cannot be cast aside. That must happen. You must look as to how this will benefit not one person, but as to how it will benefit the people as a whole. If Ranil Wickremesinghe will not provide leadership to process to amend the constitution, who will provide the leadership for it? Is the SLFP ready for it? Is it someone else from the UNP? Is Karujaya Surya ready for this? Is Nimal Siripala de Silva ready for this? Is Sajid Premadasa ready for this? Or is Anur Kumara or Sambandhan ready for this? Anyone can take leadership and pass this in Parliament. That accord needs to be reached. It is sad to note that the behaviour of the United National Party is an obstruction to maintain this cooperation.
ඒකත් අරගන්න පුළුවන් මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව ඇතුලේ මේ සම්මුතිය ඇති කරගන්න. මේ එකඟතාවය ඇති කරගන්න. අවශ්‍ය කනගාටුවට කාරණේ මේ සම්මුතිය මේ සහයෝගීතාවය පවත්වාගෙන යාම සඳහා එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ හැසිරීම අද බාධාවක් වෙලා තියෙනවා.
A party leaders meeting on electoral reforms presided by President Maithripala Sirisena took place today. Now this meeting took place this morning at the Presidential Secretariat.
This meeting was convened to seek the proposals and ideas from the leaders of political parties on new electoral reforms. The Presidential Media Unit said that the matter was discussed for a prolonged period of time. Attention was also drawn to the Dinesh Gunawardena Committee report at this meeting, and the President had instructed that if new electoral reforms need to be made, a subcommittee be appointed.
ක්‍රමයේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් නම් මම හිතන්නේ කාගේත් මේ පිළිබඳව තිබෙන්නේ මේ වෙනස් වීතුයි කියන ආකල්පයක්.
I believe that everyone is of the notion that this will change. What I personally believe is that a mixed electoral reform would be ideal. That is a combination of the first past the post system and the proportional representation system. I also believe that the preferential voting system should be abolished. Under the 100-day program, in my election manifesto, there was a clause which was about changing the electoral reform. It is also included in the 100-day program. It states that the initial stages of bringing forth an electoral reform will take place in January, and that by March the draft bill of the new electoral reform will be tabled in Parliament. Now, several views are being expressed as to whether there will be enough time to introduce the new electoral reform and call for a general election. This will be carried out step by step by holding discussions about bringing forth an electoral reform which does not include the preferential voting system.
මැතිවරණ ක්‍රමයක් පිළිබඳව සාකච්ඡා කළා යම් එකඟතාවයකට පැමිණීමයි. ඒ තුල පියවරෙන් පියවර තමයි අපිට ඉස්සරහට.
Governor of the Central Bank, Arjuna Mahendran, says that he takes responsibility for not informing primary dealers regarding the latest Treasury bond issue of the Central Bank. Speaking exclusively to News1st, the governor said that he agrees that there was a communication gap between the Central Bank and primary dealers on the bond issue.
Mr. Governor, now on the 26th, when you want to increase it up to 10 billion,
yes.
Was this communicated to the primary dealers?
This was not. So basically, we advertised 1 billion and the Public Debt Department told me they would get something in the order of 1.5 billion. And when they informed me at that day that they had got 20 billion worth of orders, I then told them that, the government had indicated to me that they needed a large amount of money. And I told them, why don't we take half of that, 10 billion? And accordingly, the tender committee then went and chose, the lowest bids that they could get to generate that 10 billion.
But the problem right now, Mr. Governor, is the fact that this was not communicated to the primary dealers.
Well, it's in the past it wasn't either. The point is, how can we communicate that to primary dealers? Because we didn't know that we would get 20 billion worth of orders. The moment we opened the bids, we realized that there was much in excess of what we had originally anticipated in the auction.
But every time, Mr. Governor, there has been a Treasury bond issue, there has been oversubscription, right?
Yes, but the point is, we don't... my point is the knowledge that I had that the government needed the money was in the back of my mind, and my expectation was that we wouldn't have many bids at these auctions, so we were going to look at other means of raising it.
So, Mr. Governor, there is a problem that persists with regard to the communication.
I agree. I mean, it's because the functioning of the market has not been perfect in the past. Now, in this instance, I think that communication didn't work properly. We should have said we needed to raise 10 billion, but of course, we had advertised it the previous day, and I only got to know of the Treasury requirement on the Thursday. So, there was miscommunication. I accept that.
So, can this be called insider trading, Mr. Governor?
No, this is not insider trading at all, because, it was just a question of us shifting from one system to another.
One organization in question was privy to information that the others did not have.
No, that has to be established. I certainly that information didn't come from me.
Mr. Governor, many primary dealers have told newspapers on the grounds of anonymity that this has caused a confusion and instability in the market. And I think as a governor, you should take responsibility for it.
No, I mean, I will take responsibility for the fact that we should have advertised 10 billion, but we didn't have that information in time.
The governor of the central bank, Arjuna Mahendran, has now admitted to a breakdown in good governance. This is precisely what the previous government also did. The people involved in this are one and the same, or that is how it appears. Therefore, it is very simple. Arjuna Mahendran must step down. He must resign immediately.
Suddenly what the participating primary dealers and the banks came to know was that an amount of 10 billion plus has been concluded at a rate of interest of 12.75. So there are two issues here. One is, if the primary dealers participating knew that they are going to bid for an amount of 10 billion and for a rate of 12.75, the approach would have been different. So there is a question mark at this point, because the participating people were not divulged the proper information for them to submit their bids. It is very important when such an accusation is made and when there are personal factors coming in. I think the right course of action would have been for the governor of the central bank to step down for a moment. After all, it's not going to cause much difficulty to the country or to the central bank being away for for a very short time until this whole thing is cleared.
Meanwhile, speaking to Newsfirst, Mahesh Kalugampitiya, member of the three-member committee appointed by the Prime Minister to look into the Treasury bond issue, said that the committee members met this morning. Attorney at law Kalugampitiya said that they intend to question three members of the central bank regarding the bond controversy. Furthermore, political party representatives continue to criticize the latest bond issue of the central bank. What happened next? They're asking the rogue's mother for an explanation. Who appointed this committee? 3 lawyers from Sirikota attached to the United National Party have been appointed to this committee. It is clear that Ranil Wickremesinghe can now influence the members of this committee and make sure they act based on his whim. If there's an allegation against a state official, what do? We have to interdict him or her or transfer that individual in question.
ट्रांसफर කළා දාලා තමයි එතන ඒක රෙඩි කරති. මෙතන මෙයාව තියාගෙන කේක් ගෙඩිය වගේ මෙයාව තියාගෙන කියනවා දැන් පරීක්ෂණ කරපළා කියලා. ජනතාවගේ ඇස් වලට වැලි ගහන්න හදන්නේ.
Now, views are being expressed in the political arena on the appointment of Shenuka Seniviratne as ambassador to Thailand prior to the conclusion of investigations into the refurbishment of residence of the permanent representative of Geneva during her tenure. Now, JVP and JHU pointed out that the Ministry of External Affairs should provide an explanation into this appointment.
Several allegations were levelled against Shenuka Seniviratne on the refurbishment of the official residence of the permanent mission in Geneva. The Auditor General's report on the investigation noted that the refurbishment was carried out by a group affiliated to the LTTE, violating tender procedure.
Shenuka Seniviratne මොකද සිතලා තියන්නේ? එයාව දැන් යවලා තානාපති කරලා තායිලන්ත.
What has happened to Shenuka Seniviratne? She has been appointed as the ambassador to Thailand. There's an allegation also raised by the UNP in the past. After the UNP came into power, this allegation has been looked at as a minor issue. You are all cognizant regarding the steps that need to be taken in the event a state government employee is charged with financial fraud, acts of bribery or misconduct. They conduct an inquiry, interdict the individual from carrying out activities related to their job until the investigations conclude. They cannot appoint her as an ambassador to another country. If investigations prove that she is innocent, go ahead, appoint her as an ambassador to any country. But if she is guilty, punish her. What are they doing now? Where is the good governance? Is this not in breach of public confidence?
චෝදනා තිබියදී ඇයි ශේනුකා මැතිනිය මේ තායිලන්තේ
I believe there's a serious issue behind the appointment of Shenuka for the post of Sri Lankan ambassador to Thailand, while an inquiry is currently ongoing based on several charges filed against her. I would say that inquiries should be carried out against the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the subject ministry regarding this. Has there been an inquiry? Have they conducted investigations? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs should publish a report to enlighten the public as to whether she has been released based on such inquiries and investigations before having made the appointment.
කරලා තියෙනවද කියන එක සම්බන්ධ විදේශ කටයුතු අමාත්‍යාංශය මේ රටට කරුණු හෙළිදරව් කරන්න ඕන. ඒ පත්කිරීම කරන්න කලින්.
The Police Financial Fraud Investigation Division recorded a statement from a former senior official attached to the former president's staff based on charges of large-scale fraud. Police media spokesperson ASP Ruan Gunasekara stated that the official was questioned for close to 5 hours. ASP Gunasekara added that he was questioned regarding the purchase of 66 vehicles under the Presidential Secretariat and 33 vehicles under a financial institution.
Welcome back to the news. The Minister of Finance, Ravi Karunanayake, says that construction of the Army headquarters in Athurugiriya will be suspended. Speaking at an event held in Colombo today, the Minister said that this step was taken following several issues that have arisen surrounding the project.
A project to construct houses for low-income earning families commenced today in the Cyril C. Pereira Maratha in Colombo 13. A housing complex comprising of 500 houses is to be constructed under this project. The previous government was directed towards building an army headquarters that would cost more than the construction of the Pentagon in America. we had to suspend the construction of the army headquarters in Athuragiriya as a sum of 50,000 million rupees has been spent on that project. This had to be stopped because the funds that could be used to construct houses to the innocent people living here is being utilized in inappropriate proportions for the construction of projects such as this. We would like to question the former Secretary of Defence Gotabaya Rajapaksa as to whether cabinet approval was granted for this project. Where have they obtained the funds for these expenses? From whom have they obtained the funds for this? If this project is estimated at ₹1 million, what is the tender procedure? These funds have been obtained through the innocent taxpayers' money. I would responsibly state today that we will not allow the continuity of such fraudulent projects. A project to construct houses for low-income earning families commenced today in the Cyril C. Pereira Maratha in Colombo 13. A housing complex comprising of 500 houses is to be constructed under this project.
A group of container truck owners staged a protest obstructing the entry route to the Colombo port near the Ingurukade junction in Colombo.
The group commenced the protest this morning by halting the transportation of goods and disrupting vehicular movement along the port entry route. The group had parked their trucks at the Ingurukade junction in this manner. The group charged that powerful ministers within the government have intervened and issued 120 new licenses for container trucks.
New licenses have been issued for 120 trucks. Powerful ministers are involved in this. That is something that did not happen in the past. We will not allow friends of various ministers to put their trucks onto the roads.
Meanwhile, Chairman of the Deshamamaka Balavega, Venerable Uwatanya Sumanatero, arrived at the location and held discussions with the protesters.
The port is a key point in any country. The government should protect the employees of such key points of the country with their lives. We can't see good governance being carried out by the present government. We ask that an immediate solution be granted and protect the livelihoods of over 10,000 employees who depend on this industry.
Newsfirst contacted the subject minister Arjuna Ranatunga in this regard.
They call themselves a container truck association, but they are not even registered. Other than that, there is one container owner who is also an employee of the port's authority. He is part of the union. In the past, what these people have done is earned money under the table by putting container trucks into operation at the port. He is part of the UNP union and I have informed the Prime Minister on this matter. I will take a decision in the future as to what course of action will be taken against this individual. We need to stop this and appoint a legal committee on this matter. Through this committee, we will hold discussions with associations who are registered with us, and then we will make a final decision to issue licenses to all vehicles through this committee. There are certain individuals who earn money illegally through this who can't do so anymore. This is why they are protesting. We have no problem with this. If they do not operate their trucks, there are plenty more private trucks that can be brought into service.
Meanwhile, the National Building Research Organisation is investigating the cave-in that took place in the Galhitiava area in Ambadandegama, Bandaravilla. Now, the cave-in took place last evening. An area of approximately 25 feet had thus far caved in. The Disaster Management Centre said that steps have been taken to evacuate 90 individuals from 23 families residing in the area. Trees sunk in right before our eyes. They vanished into the grounds. We were here from 3:45 until 7 until dusk fell. We hear echoes from beneath. It's like the blasting of rocks. We quickly got our essentials packed and then loaded them in a vehicle and left. They say that a dumping of sludge had passed through Koradagolla. We received news this morning that sludge was released through the estuary of Umaoya. The crater remains the same. We have informed people living in 12 houses in the vicinity. Due to the ongoing inspections in the area, we request the residents and those living nearby to abstain from approaching the area to see the activities. Meanwhile, a tense situation was reported today when the people who evacuated during the Cape in charge that have not received any compensation. The Deputy Director, ELM Uday Kumar, stated that the individuals are residing with their relatives at the moment. On the 17th of last month, due to several occurrences of cave-ins in Makulwela, Bandarwela and the Makulwela Vidyalaya had to be closed down. 5 kilometers away from Makulwela, the cave-in was reported yesterday in the Galitia village in Ambadandegama. Our correspondent stated that several incidents of cave-ins, fissures and landslides reported over the past months were from villages lying within 8 kilometers from the site of the Uma-Oya multipurpose development project. Now we have been crying out loud since the past to not launch the Uma-Oya project. Several professors and doctorate holders from the past, such as Professor Panaboka and from the present Professor Jinidasa Katupotha, arrived in the Bandar recently and stated that the soil in Bandarwela is not very secure. Therefore, suspend such large-scale projects. Don't construct massive reservoirs. Don't dig out tunnels. Don't construct huge buildings. Local officers and certain politicians turn a deaf ear to these cries. After the observations, we need to ascertain as to whether this took place as a result of the Uma-Oya project or because of the geographical nature of the area. We hope to obtain a report and on Thursday at the Uma-Oya meeting at the Minister of Environment to present it to the President.
And on Newsfirst tonight, indices of the Colombo Stock Exchange was in negative territory today as well for a second straight week starting from the 27th of last month.
On the 9th of January, the stock market value of all indices of the Colombo Stock Exchange was at 7,605 points. The all-share price index had plummeted to 555 points, a decrease of about 7% since then. The stock market suffered a huge crash between the 29th of January and the 2nd of February this year. Analysts cite the lack of investor confidence in the taxes introduced through the interim budget as the reason for this. Although the Colombo Stock Exchange saw an increase of up to 300 points till the 27th of February, there appears to be a sharp plunge in the indices over the recent past. The all-share price index dropped to 40.34 or 7,504.91 points.
Fishermen staged a protest off the coast of Kalpite today against the use of illegal fishing nets. Now, this demonstration was unique as it was staged in the middle of the ocean. Fishermen from Nigambo, Mana, Shilau, Palyavatta and Kandakulia were engaged in this protest. These fishermen seek a ban on the use of illegal nets, commonly known by the fisherfolk as Laila and Surupu. The demonstrators sailed from the Kalpite coast to the Battalangoduwa island while protesting. Our correspondent stated that the fishermen refrained from their fishing activities today. Our correspondent also added that the protesters, upon visiting the Battalangoduwa island, engaged in religious rituals and then convened a discussion. Black flags were seen hoisted in Kalpite, Kandakulia and Battalangoduwa as a mark of support to the protest.
They use the Laila nets before using dynamite to get the dolphins into the boat. After they use dynamite, they resort to the net and capture the fish in a minute. The size of the fish ranges from the size of your finger.
We are forced to leave the island because of all the Surukodol nets, as we are left with no jobs. All we request for is an end to this illegal form of fishing.
Well, that's a wrap for Primetime News at 9. It was an absolute pleasure having you with us. I'm Stephanie Lazarus.
And I'm Sandra Ferdinando. Do take care and good night.